We're going to jump right into a process costing question. This has both opening inventory and closing inventory. It's more complex than a question that has no opening inventory. So I've already started highlighting it, but now let's just do it together. Tropical Breeze is a company that manufactures 2 models of industrial fans. The company uses process costing to determine its unit product costs. The company has 3 processing departments: housing, electronics and testing, and inspection and packaging. In May, the electronics and testing department has an opening work in progress of 200 units. So opening work in progress of 200 units, which are 55% complete for materials and 30% complete for conversion costs. So we know we're dealing with the electronics and testing department. And we're only going to deal with that department. We're not going to look at transfer in or transfer out. We're not doing that. We're focusing on this one department. Opening work in progress included $9,600 of material costs, $5,575 of conversion costs, for a total opening work in progress of $15,175. A total of 5,000 units were started in May, and a total of 4,800 were completed and transferred out. Costs added during May include, so we've got this amount in material costs, that amount in conversion costs. At the end of May, there were 400 units in work in progress, which were 40% complete with regards to materials, and then 25% complete with regards to conversion costs. So that's a lot of information to kind of process, but we're going to take it step by step as soon as we start solving the problem. So prepare a schedule which calculates equivalent units, equivalent unit costs, and assigned costs using the weighted average method. And then provide all of the journal entries necessary to record the costs incurred during the period and transfer the completed units to the inspection and packaging department. So let's jump into the actual question. When we're doing a question like this, I like to do a schedule. I think a schedule is really helpful in order to process the information appropriately. So let's get started. I want to start with understanding some of the terminology. So we've got work in progress opening. This is equal to the work in progress closing or ending from last period. Which makes sense because when we have ending inventory, it becomes the opening inventory for the next period. So this is the same, but it's work in progress. We haven't finished anything. At the end of last period, we had parts or we had products that were incomplete. So work in progress opening is equal to the incomplete projects or incomplete units from last period. So then we have started. So started is all the units we started this period. Everything that we had not done anything last period for, this is just the stuff that we started this period. We had not worked on it last period at all. Then we have started and completed. This is the units we started and finished in this period. So of course, it might be 100% of the started if we finished everything that we started, but usually it's less than 100% of started because some of the started have not been completed and they now become the work in progress ending. So that's started and completed. Then what's completed and out? Well, that is equal to the work in progress opening because this is process costing. So the work in progress opening would have been on the conveyor belt when the day started at the beginning of this period. So we can't start and complete this month's units unless we've already finished the opening work in progress. So we finished all those incomplete units from last period. So completed and out is equal to work in progress opening plus the started and completed. whatever we started this period and we also finished. And then of course we've got the work in progress ending, and that is equal to the started but not finished. We can then use this like a mathematical equation, because when you think about it, total is equal to work in progress opening plus started and completed plus work in progress ending. But I could calculate that in other ways too. It's also equal to work in progress opening. Wait, I'll move the page up. Work in progress opening plus started. And when you think about it, total is also equal to completed and out plus work in progress ending. So there's a number of ways we can mix this up in order to solve for unknown numbers. We don't have any unknown numbers in this question, but I just wanted to cover the terminology, the concepts, so that you can see how we can play with these numbers. All right, so now let's start the question. The very first thing I have to do is prepare a schedule which calculates equivalent units. And then I'm going to prepare a schedule which calculates the equivalent unit costs using the weighted average. So the very first thing I have to do is recognize that I've got physical units. I've got direct material and I have conversion costs. I've got work in progress opening. How many units do I have? Well, the question told me how many units I have. When I'm looking at the question right here, I have 200 units. So that's 200 units. Plus, if I add into that what's started, and wait, we'll look at what's started. 5,000 units were started in the month of May. As you can see from my information right here, if we've got work in progress opening plus started, that is equal to the total number of units. So this is equal to total. These are the units that I have to account for. $5,200. Now, if those are the total units, what I want to know is how many units have I moved out and how many units are sitting in my ending work in progress. This question gives me that information. It says that a total of 4,800 units were completed and transferred out, and that 400 units were in work in progress at the end of May. So completed and out is equal to 4,800, and then work in progress ending is equal to 400. And if I've done my job right, this total will match exactly the total to account for. And it does. So this amount, wait, I'm going to grab a different color just so it's clear. This amount has to match that amount. And it matches perfectly. So now I know the completed and out. Now what I have to figure out is how much has been finished from these units and how many of these units are only partially finished. So the completed and out, of course, are totally finished. They're 100% complete. So 100% multiplied by 4,800 is equal to 4,800. 100% of the direct materials have gone into these completed units because they are finished. They have been moved out of this department. In addition, 100% of the conversion costs have been incurred for these completed units. So 100% times 4,800 is equal to 4,800. Now we have to ask ourselves, how much of the direct material have gone into the work in progress ending? So we have to get that information from the question. It says that 40% are complete with regards to material, and they're 25% complete with regards to conversion costs. So that's what it's telling us. It's telling us that 40% of the direct material has already been incurred for these incomplete units. So that's 40% multiplied by 400 is equal to 160. So the cost of 400 unfinished items is equivalent to 160 finished items. It also said that conversion costs were 25% complete. So 25% multiplied by 400 is equal to 100 units. So 400 incomplete units are equivalent to 100 completed units with regards to conversion costs. So when we add these together, this is equal to the equivalent units. So this is equal to 4,960 and 4,900. And we don't use the physical units again. So now the question becomes, how can we determine the costs? We've got the equivalent units. So we've completed this. We've got a schedule to calculate the equivalent units. But I need the equivalent unit costs, and I need to assign the costs using weighted average. So now what I have to do is I have to calculate what is the cost of each equivalent unit. And in order to do that, I have to look at the total costs. So I'm going to look at total costs. I'm going to look at direct material costs and conversion costs. I know from the question that there were some costs already incurred in opening work in progress. Opening work in progress had $9,600 of material costs and $5,575 of conversion costs. So I already know that the opening work in progress So notice I'm taking the same concept as work in progress over here, opening work in progress. Here I was talking about the units. Here I'm talking about the dollar value that has already been incurred with regards to costs. $9,600 for direct materials, $5,575 with regards to conversion costs. If I add these two costs together, they are going to be equal to $15,175. That is the cost of all the units that I had in my opening work in progress. Next is the question, how much did I spend on the units that I started this period? The costs during May included $368,600 in material costs and $350,900 in conversion costs. So now I know how much was added during the period. For direct materials, I had $368,600 of costs. For conversion costs, I had $350,900. If I add these two numbers together, it will tell me how much in total I spent during this period. This was $719,500 in costs. So this is what I have to account for. So notice the similarity. I've got work in progress opening, work in progress opening. I've got all the started units. I've got all the started costs. And then this is the total I have to account for. This is the total I have to account for. So I'm going to add these numbers together. This is equal to $734,675. And I've got $378,200. And I've got $356,475. If I add this together, that's what it equals. So now I can use these total costs to determine the cost per equivalent unit. Let me just grab another color pen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this number and I'm going to divide it by that number. And that will tell me the cost per equivalent unit. So I'm going to take A and divide it by B. I'm going to take C and divide it by D. And that will get me the cost per equivalent unit. Now, I'm only going to take it to 2 decimal places. You can take it to more decimal places. There's going to be a rounding error unless it works perfectly. So let me just grab my calculator. 378,200 divided by 4,960 is equal to, beautiful, $76.25. I'm going to take the 356,475 divided by the 4,900, and that is equal to $72.75, which never works out that perfect unless you're doing a question in order to demonstrate a concept. So that is the cost per equivalent unit. So now I can use this cost per equivalent unit to allocate the costs between what is completed and gone and what is still sitting in ending inventory. So notice I'm going to duplicate this again. I'm going to do completed and out. I've got to move my page up. So I'm going to determine the cost of the completed and out first. So what am I doing here? Let me take a highlighter so we can clearly see. I'm going to take the completed and out 4,800. I'm going to multiply it by the cost per equivalent unit, and that's going to allow me to calculate the cost of the completed and out. So this is 4,800, multiply it by 76.25, and that is equal to 366,000. That is the total cost of the direct materials for the units that are completed. What is the conversion costs for the units that are completed? Well, again, I'm going to use a highlighter just to show you what I'm multiplying. I'm taking the total completed and out units and I'm multiplying it by the cost per equivalent unit for conversion costs. 4,800 multiplied by 72.75 is equal to 349,200. If I add these two numbers together, what do they equal? Well, they equal $715,200. That is the total value of the units that are completed and gone. I still need to determine what is the value of the work in progress ending. And notice again how I'm duplicating this right here. I'm doing a duplication. So this time, what am I going to do? I'm going to take the work in progress ending and I'm going to multiply it by the cost per equivalent unit. So that's 160 units multiplied by 76.25. That is equal to 12,200. These unfinished units right here in ending work in progress are valued for direct materials at $12,200. I now have to do the same for the conversion costs. So we've got 100 units where I have to value them. I'm going to multiply it by the cost per equivalent unit for conversion costs, and that will help me to determine what is the conversion cost that I have to allocate to the work in progress ending. 100 multiplied by 72.75 is equal to 7,275. If I then add these together, it's going to equal 19,475. That is the allocated costs for the work in progress ending, the items that are still in the production process at the end of the month. If I now add these numbers together, they have to exactly equal these totals here. Just like total accounted for equals total to account for, the total that I count for here with the costs has to equal the total to account for. And if we add these two together, this is equal to 734,675. This is equal to 378,200. And this is equal to 356,475. So I know that this process worked perfectly because I can see right away that the accounted for is equal to the total to account for. So now I have appropriately allocated the cost to the units that are finished and the units that are still sitting in the production process. What is the last thing that I have to do? I have to provide all of the journal entries necessary to record the costs incurred during the period and transfer the completed units to the inspection and packaging department. I'm going to use this information to do that. So let's first look at a T account from the beginning of the month of May. I've got work in progress, and this is, of course, the work in progress for this department, electrics and testing. It had an opening value in it. I know that opening value because I got it right here. Opening work in progress, 9,600 for direct material, 5,575 for conversion costs. So this is the amount that was in the work in progress for E&T at the beginning of the month. We now have to add in all the costs that we incurred in the current period. And we know what those costs are. We know that from our work. We added in direct material of 368,600 and conversion costs of 350,900. So let's just do the entries for that. When I purchase direct material, I would do a debit to direct material, control most likely, although you can call it direct material, and then I would do a credit to either cash or accounts payable. So that's when I purchase it. I don't actually know how much I purchased, so I can't do that entry, but I just wanted to demonstrate it. Then what's going to happen is I'm going to use some of those direct materials in my production process. So I'm going to debit the work in progress for E&T, and this is for the amount that I actually used in the production process, which we know is 368,600. And then where did that come out of? Well, it came out of direct material control. And that's going to go into work in progress. So that takes care of the direct material, but we have to look at the conversion costs. Conversion costs are made up, of course, of direct labor plus all the manufacturing overhead that we had to incur in the production process. But I'm keeping those together right now. So what would that entry look like? Well, I would do a debit to the work in progress, E&T, and then I would do a credit to various. So what are those various accounts? Well, it could be things like cash or wages payable. It could be accumulated depreciation. It could be prepaid insurance. It could be accounts payable. Or it could be, if I'm using manufacturing overhead control, if I had a manufacturing overhead control account, then I wouldn't use accumulated depreciation and prepaid insurance, accounts payable, because those costs would go directly into manufacturing overhead control and then come out of manufacturing overhead control and go into the work in progress. What is the total amount of this? Well, we know that from our sheet. We know that from the information. It was 350,900. If I add this all up together, we already know what this is going to equal. It's going to equal 734,675, which is, of course, the total amount of costs that I have to account for. Now, we know from the question, wait, I'm going to pull up the question, 2 seconds. Right here. That once they finish in this department, they're going to be moved to inspection and packaging. So actually, I'm not finished the production process yet. I still have to move on to the next step the next department in the production process. So I can't move these goods into finished goods, not yet. Instead, I have to take them out of the work in progress E&T, and I have to put them in the work in progress for the inspection packaging. So this is called transferred in costs, which I'm going to cover in a totally different set of videos. Now, what is the value that I have to transfer out of E&T and into INP? Well, we calculated that. It's this number right here. I'm going to highlight it, because this is the completed and out. And if it's completed and out, then it has to be transferred either into the next department, which is what we're going to do here, or into finished goods. 715, 200, 715, 200. So I'm going to take 715, 200. Now, what is going to be left in work in progress? Do we have to calculate this number? And the answer is, well, we can, but we don't have to, because we know that the ending work in progress is going to be 19,475, because it has to be accounted for up to the exact same total. We had this total here, which was this, and now we're removing this amount because it's completed and moved into the next department. This is going to be the amount that's left over, 19,475. Now I could do the addition, but I know it's going to be 19,475. All right, so what do we carry forward in this department, the E&T, for next month? Well, we know what we're going to carry forward. We're going to carry forward 12,200 in direct material, and we're going to carry forward 7,275 in conversion costs. The total of that is going to be 19,475. 19,475. This information right here will simply be taken and transferred up to here for next month. These 400 units that are the ending inventory will transfer next month into the opening inventory, and we'll see 400 units up there. All right, so it seems fairly straightforward when we're doing weighted average.